All right, guys. In this video, I wanted to go over something that I think is going to really help out your deadlift, and this is going to be how to actually set your hips in a deadlift, and so that you can stop what most people try to do on deadlift is sort of squatting the bar up. Usually, you will find this. So, for example, this is a really good example of what your starting position would look like if you're trying to squat up the bar. You can see that with my client here. He is basically having his shoulders behind the bar. This is an issue because when we are deadlifting, we want to see have our shoulders directly lined up over the bar. He is slightly behind the bar, and what you're going to see once he starts to initiate the pull. Let me just a little bit slowed down. So once he starts to initiate the pull, hold forward immediately off the floor, and this is where basically he goes from this to this position. And this is once the bar starts to move. You can see how he basically goes from being more of a squatty position, where a lot of that, he's trying to basically have his hips as low as possible to squat the way up. But your body is not going to let the bar move off the floor of a deadlift unless you're in that proper hip position where you are hinged over and you have your shoulders over the bar. Right there, and basically his shoulders are staying over that bar the entire time. That's why this is so important. And you can see here he kind of does the same thing. And there's an issue with also how he's like setting his hips, where again he's squatting the way up and then his hips rise and then it kind of comes off the ground. And this is one other thing. If you look at basically a lot of people try using a hip shoot, but they have a lot, like way too much distance when they're trying to do that. This is going to make your center mass shift all over the place if you have your hips this high, you're having to go all the way down to the bar and trying to just set your hips. So we want to, if you are doing a hip shoot, which it can be a really good strategy, we don't want to have a lot of distance to travel, but that's going to create more issues with center of mass, how we're applying force into the bar and our hinge itself. And then here you can kind of see again that results in the same squatty pattern where this is the starting spot, then he immediately gets pulled forward to where his hips are a little bit higher and his torso is more pulled over. So really, how do we fix this? So they're really going to be a simple three-step process that will apply to both the sumo deadlift and the conventional deadlift. And I'm going to illustrate this with myself. So you can see right here, this is me deadlifting. And really what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a very slight bend in my knees. And then in order to create that space between myself and the bar, I'm going to hinge down to the bar, pushing my hips back. Right here, you can see there my hips are set back. I'm in a spot where basically I'm creating as much distance between my upper body and the bar as possible. And when I do that hip shoot, it's a very small movement if you look at what I'm doing. And as I'm doing that, as I'm initiating this movement, I'm thinking of driving my big toe down into the ground to get some quad drive off the floor. But my hips stay in that hinged over position where they're not rising. And I'm really trying to keep my torso as high as possible. And then from that spot, once my setup is in a good spot, I just have to think about standing tall. And the reality about lifting, guys, is that most technique issues are in the setup. If you nail your setup, your lift is going to go well. You're not going to have to think. But if your setup is kind of wonky and all over the place, and you don't have a good process for setting up, then you're going to have to think more and change more things about how you're lifting. So again, slight bend in the knees, hinge down to the bar by pushing those hips back to create space. And then from here, I'm just thinking of big toe pressure, and I'm driving up as tall as possible with my torso. And then I'm not thinking at all while I'm deadlifting about leaning back at all. I'm just thinking about standing tall. Because if I lean back, what's going to happen is I'm going to lose that leverage over the bar, and I'm not going to have my scapula over the bar enough. You can really see this on my 694, where I stay over the bar and patient the entire time. If I was to get to, say, this spot right here, or start to just go down, and I think about leaning back and not just driving upwards, I'm not locking out that lift. So drive upwards and just think about standing tall. You don't need to think about leaning back. And the same thing, soft knees. You can see right there, my knees are soft. Push those hips back. Grab the bar. Big toe pressure as I'm applying upward force into the bar by basically trying to have my torso start as high as possible. Again, I'm creating all this space between myself and the bar from my hinge. You don't squat the way up on deadlift. That's not how things go. A good example of how this might look on a sumo deadlift is my client Oscar. You can look at obviously how he initiates his deadlift. Um, he does a really good job of this. Where he hinges back. You can see his knees are soft here, and he really just hinges back. That's his first movement. See there? That's what the hinge looks like. And then he braces, grabs the bar, big toe pressure, standing tall. That is as simple as your deadlift needs to be. If you can get that hinge right and that starting position right, your deadlift is going to be really snappy and going to be in a really good spot. So again, just simplify that overall process. Stop trying to squat up your deadlift. Really trust that hinge. The hinge is the foundation of the deadlift. And if you really just focus on hinging down to the bar, like above really anything else in the deadlift, it's automatically going to make your deadlift feel a lot better. Now, if you're not used to this, like with any technique change, it might take some time for it to start to feel better, but it's going to result in better long-term progress. And sometimes with technique for powerlifting, like you need to take a little bit of a step back in order to really slingshot yourself forward. So hopefully this is helpful. If you guys have any questions, just ask down in the comments.